What's happening, everybody? Ryan Thomas here for another Thomas Take Sports Podcast morning show. Sunday morning, week 2. The Buffalo Bills are taking on the Miami Dolphins, hoping to squish the fish. First, of course, I have to introduce the guest on the show, Phil Munson, great buddy of mine. He owns the team IRKO'd in the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Fantasy League, Fantasy Football League as well. Phil Munson, Sabres blogger, putting out daily content on all things Buffalo Sabres. Check him out. Check out his blog. Be sure to post that in the tweets and in the comment section below on the Facebook stream. Phil, how's it going, buddy? Thanks for joining me.
Hey, no problem. It's a beautiful Sunday morning here in Chili, New York, as I was just talking to you about. So it's nice in 50s and a little bit of sun. I got a little natural light coming in. So
Chili, that's a cool name for a town. Chili.
Well, your GPS will say chili every single time.
Oh, okay.
So you
do they have a Chili's there by any chance?
Well, okay. Funny thing is they used to, and it was closed quite a few years ago. It used to be a Perkins too, got closed down. There's not because of the pandemic, but it was
right.
That's everything. Literally everything is in Henrietta or Greece. All those like restaurants. We have an Applebee's. That's about it.
That's important. Applebee's is important, right?
And a few local bars, a few local.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that. So, Phil, let's dive into the first topic of discussion. Obviously, we are here. Bills, Dolphins, week 2. You're rocking the Bills hoodie. I'm rocking the peak J.P. Lossman, Dick Duran years, if you want to call them that, with the navy blue. I'm still sporting this. It's still warm. It fits me even better than it did when I was 12 or 13 when I got it. So let's dive into this week 2 game. Obviously, the main headline in the game is that Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmunds are out for this week. The Bills linebacker core has definitely taken a hit this week, and we'll dive into how that can help or hinder depending on how this game plays out. But I wanted to get your thoughts on just how big of a loss is this for this defense. We will find that out within this game. But what were your thoughts originally when you heard that both Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmunds would be out this week?
Well, I had an inkling that, I think kind of everybody did, that Milano was going to be out because he's dealt with these hamstring injuries now for, I think, going on 2 or 3 years. And it's just really tough for him. He's a compact guy. So, and I feel like guys that are like kind of short to the ground, I mean, you could think even of running backs too, as soon as they pop a hamstring, because most running backs are like less than 6 foot half the time.
Right.
Once they do that, it's really hard for them to get back. And the Bills have dealt with hamstring injuries really well over the last few years. They usually give a week off. And it's like the guy that comes on your podcast all the time, and I'm missing his name, the guy that does injury updates. He always says that
Kyle Trimble.
Yes, Trimble is awesome, by the way. I know he doesn't know me. Tell him the next time I love his work. I think he follows me on Twitter, but I mean, we've only had like a couple of interactions.
It's so tough to keep track of everybody too. It's like, Is that the guy that's that? I remember meeting you at the Buffalo Podathon when we first met, and I'm like, that's Phil. I know that. Yeah, that's Phil. It's like it's tough to keep track.
Yep, exactly. So, so kind of going off of like what Trimble said in the past, it takes a couple of weeks to come back from hamstring injuries. I mean, if you've ever deadlifted before and you feel that tightness the next day, it doesn't feel good to run.
Yeah, right.
So I definitely think you got to keep Milano out at least for this week, if not another. I think the reason why he didn't practice all week was because they just don't want to, because you see it all the time. You see like a corner come back. Say if Josh Norman would have come back too early, or what's his name, Wallace, if Levi Wallace would have come back too soon, and he popped the hamstring. I mean, it's not, if you tear a hamstring, one of the guys on Pittsburgh, one of their linebackers, he tore his hamstring completely. He was out for 2 years. 2 years. So you don't want to do that. But to also getting over to Edmunds, I thought he had a chance because he was limited all week, and I thought I know he's a gamer, but they probably thought about Miami, and they were like, sometimes you need to get play time, especially with like Dobson and Klein. Klein, I trust. And last week they were predominantly a nickel anyways. So, and they're predominantly a nickel team at this point. You don't see them. Yes, they're 4-3, but you really just see them predominantly in nickel. So
right, they mix
I
it
think
up. That's for
it's
sure.
gonna be a tough game because I've heard really good things about Dobson. I heard that he can move pretty well. I mean, he's no Edmunds because he doesn't have the length in the middle of the field, but he can move pretty well. His coverage is okay. Same with Klein. And Klein knows the defense. That's the biggest thing. You need communication on this defense because it's a zone-based defense. And if you don't have that communication in a zone-based defense, because that's what I ran back in high school, if you don't have that communication and people don't know where other people are going, you're going to have those classics where people run into each other, just like how the Patriots always used to make us. Remember those crossing routes? They would force us to run guys into each other. If you've noticed over the last few years, guys aren't doing that anymore, or not as much. They're not hitting each other. They know where somebody's coming. They know if somebody's doing a crossing. So I'm hoping that these two, Dobson and Klein, I'm hoping that they have at least similar communication, that doesn't happen. Because as I was telling you before, Chan Gailey, screen game, short passes, quick passes, because their offensive line, that Miami offensive line, and I know we'll probably get into it, it's a patchwork offensive line, just kind of like how the Jets were last week.
It's safe to say that Miami offensive line patchwork, I would say it's not an NFL offensive line. It's not, and we'll see that today. I think we will see that. We'll dive into that. I wanted to also get your thoughts on the Bills Week 1 likes and dislikes. What did you like about the Week 1 game against the New York Jets, to kind of provide a brief recap? To go back a couple days ago, those that don't follow me on the Twitter sphere, I have a lot of viewers and listeners that are just Facebook only people. They don't want to get involved with the Twitter beefs and the Twitter negativity, and I get it. But I posted a tweet a couple days ago in regards to Josh Allen and the 14 carries that he had in last week's game. And although it was a 27-17 Bills victory, not to sound, like I'm nitpicking a win, which I always can't stand that. Whenever there's a journalist out there, he's just nitpicking and ripping the Bills apart after a win. It's really tough to do that. But, I kind of want your take on this and see if you're on the same wavelength as me, or if you have a different take to offer as well, of course. Josh Allen running the ball 14 times a game, that can't happen, right? Like, this franchise has invested so much into Josh Allen. We can't see Josh Allen taking the hits that he's taken, not just in that game last week, but he had taken hits a lot in his rookie year. That was when he had to, and he didn't have the weapons. My point is, you don't bring in Stephon Diggs, John Brown, Cole Beasley, Dawson Knox, Devin Singletary, and Zach Moss to be run blockers for Josh Allen. What do you think of that?
That was it was interesting to me last week because I was with a big, last week was, game one. Obviously you can't go to the game. I'm at like a big football party, and I have my buddy's dad there. And I'm talking like, these guys are all old school smash mouth football people. And they're like, the first couple times he was carrying the ball, they were like, yeah. They're like, Allen's got it. And he was hitting little darts, getting himself into a rhythm. I'm not sure. I think it was part of the game plan because they needed to move the Jets defensive line. They need to get them spread out because they're very good against the run. The only way you're going to beat them is if you get them spread out. And I get that. But there were a bit too many carries. Obviously, he fumbled a couple of times, which he is known for. It's him, Carson Wentz, and I believe there's one more quarterback that's not Deshaun Watson. There's one more that fumbles a lot. But Carson Wentz and Josh Allen right now, like Carson Wentz.
Kyler Murray fumbled a couple times. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
But over the last 3 seasons, it's Carson Wentz and Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Darnold has the picks, and then Baker Mayfield as well he throws a lot of picks too. But that's what worries me because he's not afraid to sling it in there, and usually he throws so hard where he gets bailed out. But his fumbling, I've noticed he carries the ball out here because he's almost still acting like when he's running he's going to pass it.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot, I think it was ESPN or it was NFL Network that showed a replay of Josh Allen next to Deshaun Watson. And then there was one other quarterback. Or no, it was Lamar Jackson, sorry. Lamar Jackson, remember in the playoff game last year with Josh Allen when he did that weird toss?
Oh, I remember.
Yes. Yeah. Lamar Jackson did it last year in a game same thing happened, except it was a clean turnover. Because remember, I think Dawson Knox hit the ball out of bounds to try to preserve the possession.
Right.
Lamar Jackson literally flipped it to the guy, didn't realize it, and he bounced it into the other guy's hands, into the opposing team's hands. And nobody said anything about that about Lamar Jackson. So I am on your side that take the carries and maybe take like about 5, 6 carries less.
Right. I don't want to see him not run it ever again. And I think that was a miscommunication between those that commented on it.
Of the Twitter world.
and my guy, Sal Capaccio, we're going back and forth. And it's like, Sal, I want Josh Allen to run. I'm not saying I don't want him to run at all. Mm-hmm. There's a saying that goes in the fight game. Sometimes a trainer has to protect a fighter from himself. Mm-hmm. And sometimes a coach has to protect a player from himself. And I feel like Josh Allen's biggest critique that I have, not even, the inaccuracy. I think he's actually a lot more. Yeah, mm-hmm. I actually think he's a lot more accurate than what people give him credit for with the weapons that he hasn't had. With the weapons that he has now, I think we'll see that improve. But my biggest critique is that he doesn't slide and he embraces the hits. Mm-hmm. He even said sometimes on the 4th and Forever podcast with Mark Sanchez that he feels like he gets woken up a little bit when he gets hit. He likes it. He likes mm-hmm. to feel it. And I'm like, that's cool. It shows how tough he is and everything, but don't be too tough for your own good. Live to fight another day. And I think Brian Dable just needs to take a little bit of a step back on that.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. I think he needs to. We were all yelling at the TV like slide. Like mm-hmm. And I'm talking like this is like in a crowd of like 15 people in a basement. Sorry, we're all family here. That's what it was basically. Everybody's just like, where are you social distancing? It was all family. Everybody has seen each other countless times. But anyways, yeah, everybody's yelling like slide. To me, last week, there was a lot of things to like about Josh Allen. So if you're going likes and dislikes, likes, I loved his throwing. And on that same video, on the same token of him, fumbling the ball, little toss. Obviously, you don't want to go back to that playoff game, but everybody was saying that the John Brown, when he threw it, completely whiffed on it in the end zone. Mm-hmm. Me and you could almost make that throw because it was that. Right. It was right there.
They were across from each other, yeah.
Yeah, and then on the same token, there was replays of Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. Like they started just listing off, and they showed the same exact throw to a wide open receiver where me and you could make the little pitch and catch. Mm-hmm. And Josh Allen is under such a different microcosm than every other quarterback in the league. And I know Bills fans, Bills Mafia gets a lot of flack because everybody thinks we just defend everybody. I think Josh Allen has he does deserve a lot of his criticism because he does do dumb things. But the thing is, you focus on the dumb things as a media so much more than you do, say, Lamar Jackson or Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is in such a bad position right now. I think if he was on any other team other than the Jets and I would say the Browns, a better organized team, mm-hmm. he would be in a better spot. Him and Josh Allen would be in a better category with each other. To me, though, like my likes and dislikes of week one, my dislikes are what you just said. Cut the running back a little bit, and Sal's my dude too. Love Sal.
Love Sal. I just want to see Allen stay healthy.
Yeah, and the comparisons to him and Cam are right. But here's the thing: we've seen Cam get hurt. I rather have a trajectory, and this is something me and Sal went back and forth about a little bit too on Twitter in a separate post. Mm-hmm. Somebody brought up Donovan McNabb. Right. I rather have the trajectory for Josh Allen to be Donovan McNabb because Donovan McNabb, I watched him when he was in Syracuse. He was fantastic. He was in and out of the pocket. He could create magic.
Very smart. Yeah.
But he wasn't accurate. Like he wasn't the accurate quarterback. He was like a 50-something% thrower out of college. The only reason why the Eagles drafted him were like, well, he's an athletic quarterback. Andy Reid loved that. McNabb was the beginning of Patrick Mahomes. Think about that.
Right. Yeah, that's those guys like McNabb and Vic, like I've said a bunch of times, it's like every team has tried to find that next version. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there is a next version of either one of those guys. Like as great as Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and some of these quarterbacks in the league now, Kyler Murray, I think he's about to do big things. There just isn't that next version of a Mike Vick, or there's only one first time Mike Vick or first time Donovan McNabb. But yeah, I saw that post as well, and it was Brad Childress, former NFL head coach for the Minnesota Vikings. He was talking about McNabb and the parallels between McNabb and Allen, and how Allen kind of needs to brush up on those things to essentially what I've thought really since his rookie year. His rookie year, you go back, he didn't have the weapons. So understanding that, knowing that, you had a Kelvin Benjamin that, for lack of a better term, truth be told, he was quitting on the team. Charles Clay and Josh Allen just wasn't a fit. And the offensive line was in complete and total disarray. Now you have an offensive line that has been revamped. You bring in all these weapons. You traded a first-round pick for Stephon Diggs. I don't want to see the 2018 version of the Buffalo Bills offense when they've brought in all these weapons. And I don't think anybody else should want to either. I understand, Josh Allen wants to, run and make plays. And if he's extending a play to throw the ball, that's what he can do really well. He can throw on the run arguably even better than he can from a three-step drop. Yeah. But I want to see him fight another day, because you know it, Phil, and I know it. If Josh Allen were to go down, this team's season would go up in smoke. Forget about division contention. Forget about playoff contention. This team would be a lock for 6 to 7 wins at most if Josh Allen were to go down.
Yeah,
so
with a serious injury. Yep. I mean, for a week or two, they'd be able to probably tread water a little bit, even if they were to lose, both of those games. But yeah, Josh Allen's kind of the key to make things go. As much as quarterbacks, I hate the win-loss thing with quarterbacks. I do. That's my win and loss are important. I get that, but quarterbacks, you can get away for a few games without your starting quarterback because you can game plan around your backup quarterback. But if he's gone for the whole season, that's why do you think the Eagles are doing what they're doing? They got somebody sitting at home, just in case Wentz goes down. We're keeping you away, but you already know the playbook, and we don't want you to get COVID. So
a vet like Josh McCown, who's played everywhere. So I'm shocked he hasn't made a pit stop in Buffalo in his career with all the quarterback.
And he loves Buffalo too, by the way. He said a couple of really nice things about it here. So because I think a couple of road trips.
He visited here.
Yeah.
He visited here. I actually saw him at a Sabres game. I remember he was with Rex Ryan, and I saw them they were on the Jumbotron, and then I actually walked past Josh McCown. He's a big dude.
Is he?
A real big dude. Yeah.
I can imagine. He's got to be 6 foot something, right? 6 foot 4 or 5 or something.
6'4", but like a fit 6'4", 220, 230, really lean. Yeah, I thought, man, that dude he's in really good shape. So that's why he's been able to play as long as he has. So, big ups to him. We got some comments as well. Good buddy of mine, Matt McKee. He's also one of my fantasy football owners in another fantasy league. He says, I expect more runs from Allen this week, to be completely honest. And yeah, we definitely can dive into that too. As far as the game plan and everything like that, this Miami Dolphins secondary is very good. I mean, in terms of the improvements that they've made a lot more improvements on paper, I should say. But run defense, Miami, not really quite there. We saw Cam Newton kind of carve them up, a la Cam Newton 2015 last week. So we'll talk about that. We'll dive into that, which is the next topic of discussion. The Buffalo Bills keys to victory for the Week 2 battle against the Miami Dolphins. I'm very pumped up for this game, as is everybody, because to be honest, Phil, I didn't think that we would even have a season. All this COVID stuff going on and the crazy world that we're living in. Your first key to victory, though, and we touched on it kind of at the beginning of the show, but stopping Chan Gailey's screen attack. That was something that Chan Gailey made pretty famous, actually, as an offensive coordinator for the Steelers back in the Cordell Stewart days, with Slash being the quarterback, and also coming to Buffalo as the head coach with guys like C.J. Spiller. That was CJ's best season, I believe, 2011. My memory serves me right.
Yep.
With CJ Spiller just catching passes out of the backfield. And the Miami Dolphins have not one but 2 running backs that can catch out of the backfield, Jordan Howard and Matt Breida. What do you think is going to be the difficult spot for Buffalo in stopping the screen attack, if any?
Kind of like how we talked about a little bit earlier with Klein and now I'm missing his name. I can Dobson. Yeah, I was like Obson. I was about to say Obson. I'm like, no, it's Dobson. So with the two of them, the coverage underneath is going to probably have to change a little bit. From my understanding, it sounds like they might bring Poyer down, and we might have an extra safety in. So that might mean a little bit more of Dean Marlowe or something like that, just to kind of mix up the coverage, just so that your linebackers, there's not so much stress on them. They can actually flow with the running backs a little bit more.
Right.
Because I think Klein is pretty good with coverage running backs. He's not going to be, your stick to your glue kind of guy. But when I remember him in New Orleans, he was pretty good in the playoffs a couple times I saw him, especially when sticking with running backs. He's not so good against tight ends. And I know Miami's tight end this year, he's very athletic. He can get
he can get Jeremy Shockey-esque.
Yes, he can get open in space underneath. What you have to do against the screen game is, if you can, get pressure up the middle. And the Bills are kind of known for that at this point. They're known for running those stunts. They're known for running the twists. You don't know who's coming in. Like, you don't know if Ed Oliver is just going to punch inside or if he's going to come back outside, and then the defensive end, like a Jerry Hughes, is going to swing around.
Right.
I think this week, too, I think Vernon Butler's back, and I think that'll help. Now that the defensive line, it kind of stinks because you lose your linebackers, but your defensive line gets stronger.
Right.
I think that'll be good. We'll have to see. I don't think the inactives have come out yet. We don't know if AJ Epinesa is going to make his, long-awaited start. Which that is probably a different, podcast for a different day, and why they're probably holding
that. This is the best thing about streaming. There's no time limit, man. We could go for an hour. We go for whatever. Yeah, I was shocked that Epinesa was inactive. Actually, just to touch on that, I thought. I was really looking forward to seeing him play, and I thought in terms of the limited training camp action that I got to see in comparison to years past, I thought AJ Epinesa, wow, this dude fell into the second round. Really? Really, he's throwing guys around. He's throwing Deion Dawkins around. That's their starting left tackle. That's a big deal.
Yep. I think the issue with Epinesa was he's very limited in his pass rush moves. So you got a guy like Trent Murphy, and you got a guy like Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison too. Those guys have multiple moves. As much as we want to dig on Trent Murphy, he actually was a lot better last year, especially against the run. And Mario Addison is basically your replacement for Shaq Lawson. Epinesa was supposed to be kind of the Shaq Lawson replacement. I think Epinesa is very strong at the point of attack. He can drill, just like as we see, he could just run you back, bull rush you, get you out of the way, rip across your face, get into the backfield. But that's really the only move he has. From my understanding, he was starting to learn kind of like the spin move, like the ice pick move, a couple of other things. He's not quite there yet. And they need special teams. So remember, there's 3 phases, and we've gotten killed. And even last week, there was a couple of good comebacks, because that's why I think they brought up. There was a couple of linebackers they brought up because they want to shore up their special teams. They don't want Miami to get a cheap touchdown on us today. And that is what has killed Bills teams of the past. That's what I love about Sean McDermott, because he realizes, okay, we're going to be weaker at the linebacker position, but how can we strengthen the rest of our team? Well, let's get our special teams linebackers up. Let's bring them up. Let's make sure that we're covering better than what we did last week, because we don't want a cheap touchdown on a punt return or a kickoff return. That is where and shooting back to Epinesa, that was why I think he wasn't in last week. They were focused on, okay, do we really need a third string defensive end this week? Or do we want to focus on our special teams to make sure that that's shored up? I think it was just a spot for that. And he might be in this week because of a couple linebackers out. We might not see both of those linebackers that were called up from the practice squad. They don't have to play. They just were called up just in case. We don't know if, God forbid, Dobson goes down right before the game. They might need one of those linebackers. So, me personally, I think we're going to see Epinesa today. I think, just because of the injuries to the linebackers. I think once those 2 linebackers come back, he might get pushed back out, because you really don't need. They've always had a rotation of those defensive ends, and I still think my boy Johnson. I love that guy. He's got a motor on him.
Yeah, Daryl Johnson. He was a standout last year as far as the training camp went, and
Yep.
yeah, it goes back to the fact that year one, Sean McDermott inherits this Rex Ryan mess of this defense where he's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and Sean McDermott says, "I'm just going to play my defense, which is actually what fits the players that we do have, and maximize the talent of some of the guys that hadn't really been seen yet." And I thought, ever since they brought in Sean McDermott, this defense has been really, in retrospect, it's amazing how elite this defense has been. So to lose Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmunds for this game, as much as Bills fans are a little bit worried about it, I saw Twitter, oh no, we're without those two guys. Sean McDermott is such a defensive genius that I don't think it will have as much an impact as what people think. It could have an impact in today's game, but maybe not as much as what people fear. And it's going to be very interesting in terms of stopping that screen attack too. The Dolphins have just added. I mean, I remember during the offseason, the Miami Dolphins PR department put out a press release of all the new players that they've brought in. This is a completely different team than last season's team. Completely different. Whether Ryan Fitzpatrick is starting today or not, the offensive line is new. The wide receivers, some of the same guys are still there, but the running backs in particular are different in Jordan Howard and Matt Breida. To me, those are two guys that Buffalo has to really key in on because Miami's not going to be relying on Ryan Fitzpatrick to win them games. I think he's going to try to get his 250 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, hopefully not 2 or 3 interceptions in the case of Fitz. It's either that or 250 passing yards and 4 interceptions for Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's just his MO. But to me, stopping Jordan Howard and Matt Breida are the big storylines of this game. But going back to Buffalo, my biggest dislike in the process of Allen getting the football via rushing attack on the 14 attempts that he had, please, for the love of God, Brian Dable, in this game in particular, let's feed Devin Singletary. Let's feed Zach Moss. We didn't invest 2 third-round draft choices in these two guys for nothing, right? Like, I know it's only week 2, but I want to see these guys get the ball. I want to see what they can do together.
Yep, and you put Cody Ford inside, and Cody Ford is known coming out of college for being good inside and pushing guys around and getting them out of position. You have Mitch Morse, who knows where to make the calls. This is a time to hit the inside game and hit it hard. Shaq Lawson is, as we know him, he's good against the run, but he didn't do so hot last week. And I think he was fitting a scheme last year with the Bills that finally fit him. Not saying that Miami isn't doing that, because they have great coaching. We both agreed on that. The coaching, Jets coaching, Miami coaching, 2 completely different things. You're comparing apples and oranges at that point.
Right.
But they're weak up the middle. So you have to attack their weak point. And I can't tell you who their linebackers are. I can tell you who their corners are, but I can't tell you who their linebackers are, and I can tell you that they're Shaq Lawson. Otherwise, you're kind of like stuck. I shouldn't know who because their defensive tackle actually was the one that was supposed to go to the Bills if Ed Oliver wasn't supposed to fall. He's the one that got kicked out last year, right? He got kicked out of the second game, I believe.
Yeah. You're thinking of I think it's Christian Wilkins.
Yes.
Is that it? Yeah.
Yep.
Clemson.
He was supposed to go to the Bills. He was supposed to be at the Bills that spot, but Ed Oliver fell. So we picked out Oliver over him, and then the Dolphins picked him up with because they had 2 first-round picks, and they ended up getting him. But from my understanding, I mean, he's good up the middle on the pass rush, but he's not good at keying in on the holes. So that's why they were so good with Cam last week. And Cam is amazing at, if you ever notice, he'll hold that ball on that RPO. Him and Josh Allen last week were tops of the league with RPOs. So I'm thinking if you could do that RPOs, but like we said, and it might be this week, we might see 14 to 15 carries from Josh Allen, but not designed. It's going to be an RPO because Josh might be like, he might wait. Oh, I see. I can cut out here. And what I would do, run away from Shaq Lawson because he knows Josh. So he might know that he's going to hold on to that ball, and he's like, no, he's going to run at me. He's going to run at me. I'm just going to sit here and wait.
Finding the running lane. Like if Josh Allen is going to tuck it down, find the running lane that provides you with the opportunity to not get hit. that's what. And there is a science to that. Like people understand that everyone that's watching this show right now, they're all football fans. They know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Russell Wilson, not Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is the same way. He doesn't really find the running lanes the right way, and he runs into traffic. The awareness of everybody around you. I think if you're going to be that guy, and I think Josh Allen can be that guy, you got to avoid those running lanes that have people in front of you to knock you down. The next key to victory for me is dominate with the front seven. If you're the Buffalo Bills defense, that front seven did take the hit, obviously, with Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmunds out. But I think the Buffalo Bills have one of the best defenses in the National Football League. To heck with saying that it's one of the best in the AFC, I'm going full-on National Football League. And I think we're going to see the front seven, in particular the front four. My eyes are on the front four with Harrison Phillips back, Ed Oliver back, Vernon Butler most likely to play today, Jerry Hughes the vet, Trent Murphy the vet. But a pleasant surprise to me last week was Mario Addison. Even the plays that Mario Addison didn't make last week as a vet in this league, for him to be looking as fresh as a daisy as he looked last week, I'm expecting a big game out of him, and I'm expecting if he can continue this pace, that defensive line could be more troublesome than what people thought prior to this season starting.
Yep, and remember Sean McDermott also, and I keep going back to Sean McDermott and how he coaches. He rotates everybody through. He'll put if you get the Dolphins today into like a 3rd and 15, because that could happen, because Chan's going to run a screen and it's going to get Trey White's going to tackle the guy 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, because they're going to try to hit those quick passes because they can't take the pressure. But if you get that 3rd and 15, you want to have Mario Addison, you want to have Jerry Hughes, you want to have Trent Murphy, and then you want to have a big guy up the middle, maybe a Vernon Butler, maybe an Ed Oliver, and you bring that push and you run those stunts, you run those like inside outs, you bring the pressure. And if you can bring the pressure with just 4 guys and not have to bring a 5th, Fitz is not going to like that, because he's good against the zone, but again, he can only throw underneath. Now we both know that Fitz will go deep. He'll try to chuck that ball. But if you got a guy like Devontae Parker, who, again, remember hamstring injuries that we talked about?
Right,
he's got a hamstring injury. Right. So if he blows a tire, I mean, you got White out there. People are saying like, White might get 2 interceptions this week because of a Devontae Parker not being able to be at 100%.
He's picked up Fitz before. Yep. He picked up Fitz before last year in the end zone. Fitz tried to fit it into that corner of the end zone, the front corner of the end zone, and Trey White, he picked him off. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like visualizing how the X's and O's of this game play out, and knowing the way Ryan Fitzpatrick tries to avoid pressure, he always takes a step back first rather than stepping up. And he takes a step back, and then he's like, oh, wait, I should have stepped up. And when he steps up, it's too late. That's oftentimes, I've watched him his whole career, that's oftentimes why he gets sacked or why he is forced to rush out of the pocket. So I think they're going to bring the pressure with that front four. This Miami offensive line is not that great. The Jets offensive line last week, I think Buffalo did a pretty decent job at penetrating the pocket, at least to force Darnold into throwing it far sooner than he wanted to. And that pick that they forced from Sam Darnold, for him to roll out to the left side of the pocket and throw up this wounded duck for Matt Milano to pick off. I mean, I think we could see that potentially today in this game. We talked about the next topic, less designed runs with Allen, I think is more. Less is more. I don't want to see Allen week 1 run the ball 14 times. Designed runs is one thing. RPOs, in your opinion, is another. We touched on that, so I'll skip over that. But this defense creating turnovers, whether it's 3 and outs. I thought the defense was phenomenal in the first half of that game last week against the Jets, forcing 3 and outs, not even creating turnovers, but getting the ball back. What is it about this defense that you think is most special? Like if you could put your finger on it and say to yourself, this is what makes the Bills defense special, what do you think that is?
I definitely think McDermott, and I should give a little bit more credit to Leslie Frazier. They're great with making adjustments. I think last week they took their foot off the gas a little bit, but that was on the offensive side of the ball. That wasn't so much on the defensive side of the ball. The defense kind of, stayed pat even when guys went down last week. And yeah, the Jets got that long pass. And it always gets me so ticked off because it's like that Madden pass where your buddy throws that quick slant and all of a sudden he goes 70 yards for a touchdown. You're like,
right.
Can nobody tackle? I think that was probably something on the film this week that Frazier sat down everybody and said, hey, we ended up two guys got knocked out because you guys were not in position where you need to be. If we stay in our zones, if you follow the communication, you follow the rules, I think we'll be okay. And again, I think that goes back to there might be an extra safety on the field this week. There might be a Dean Marlowe out there kind of, roaming around, and he comes up and hits. So he might be the guy that's kind of almost like your third linebacker, and he might be the thumper. So I think this week, I think there's going to be a little bit more creativity in the defense. Obviously they run a zone, but they're going to definitely be mixing up coverages. And I think when you think, Trey White might be on Devontae Parker, maybe he's not. Maybe he passes him off to a Jordan Poyer, or maybe he passes him off to a Micah Hyde. And maybe Parker doesn't know that, or he doesn't see that right away. He runs his route. They know where he's going. Boom, there's a pick right there. Not to say that Fitz hasn't seen that before. That's not it. But I think Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier, don't be surprised if the first drive that Miami has gets some yardage or gets some points, because they might want to see what Chan's going to run. Because if I remember correctly, and you remember correctly, Chan, I remember there were so many times when the Bills that very first or second drive would score, and you were like, here we go. Guns are going. Get the party started.
And then we're going to fizzle out.
And then we fizzle out because
right.
We had coaches that knew how to adjust. Chan doesn't really, I don't want to say he doesn't adjust, but he kind of just keeps running the same stuff.
He runs to the same, he sticks to what he knows, and sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. And I think when you're going up against a defensive mind like Leslie Frazier, as you mentioned, talk about maximizing the talent and talk about inheriting players via the draft, plugging them and playing them and staying with them, like Trey White, Edmunds, Matt Milano. Ed Oliver, a lot of people said he had an underwhelming rookie season. I actually disagree. I think he was trying to find his footing and was able to actually find a role. It's very tough to find a role as a rookie, and I thought he did that, and that's his role to this day. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how Leslie Frazier uses some of the Dean Marlows of the world, the Tyrell Dobson, AJ Klein. Those are the guys that are going to have to step up, obviously, due to these two injuries, which I think are important. A lot of people are saying, hey, we're playing Miami. Miami's not that good. Matt Milano is out this week. Tremaine Edmunds is out this week. We're okay. I wouldn't say we're okay. I want to watch this game and find out. I'm not going to say we're okay yet until we see the end of this game. We'll see how this impacts the defense throughout the rest of the game. But we're shifting gears here. We're shifting gears. The background, the overlay is Bill Stadium, but you know it and I know it. This is a football town. This is a hockey town. And being that you are a Sabres blogger, you cover the team pretty closely and follow the team with a fine-tooth comb, I would say, in terms of your analysis. I want to dive into the Buffalo Sabres trade that they made. Kevin Adams, the rookie GM, first-time executive at this level in the National Hockey League. Buffalo Sabres acquire Eric Staal in a 1-for-1 trade, sending Marcus Johansson to the Minnesota Wild. Phil, I was shocked that this trade actually happened. I didn't hear any rumblings of it at all. And you know me, I'm always trying to, find the scoops and stuff like that. I didn't hear anything about this trade until it actually happened. Nobody did, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts on this trade? To just dive right into it. What are your thoughts on this trade and how this trade can actually help the Buffalo Sabres?
Well, first things first, it shores up the number one issue the Sabres have had for about ever since Jack Eichel's been drafted, other than when they had Ryan O'Reilly, having a number 2 center. you cannot win in this league without multiple centers, multiple lines giving you some offense. The Sabres have been plagued the last 5 years, ever since they drafted Jack. Why do you think people keep saying, oh, Jack's going to want out of town? Because he doesn't have somebody to back him up. Now, say what you will about Ryan O'Reilly. Him and Jack had a pretty good year together, about a year and a half together. But that's a different story for a different day. Eric Staal is exactly what this team needs. Like, to a pin. He's old enough to be that vet. He was a captain for Carolina for the team, that team that went to the Cup. He was on as much as and the first joke I made right after I didn't even say one for one. I didn't say one for one. I just said so when Eric Staal comes back, he's gonna bring that cup and give it to the Sabres, right? But
he should.
Yeah, he had mentioned that. He mentioned and this is another thing why I like him. And as he's one of those guys you love to hate, but love to have him on your team.
Right. Very respectable. Respectable career. Yeah.
Him and Sidney Crosby were drafted 1-2. So he was on the radio. His first interview was on the Instigators the other day. And I listened to that. And his first thing he tells his sons, have fun with the game. Mm-hmm. And then he mentioned Sidney Crosby by name. He's like, oh, they're not out there trying to be the next Sidney Crosby. And then they asked him, well, why do you keep mentioning Sidney Crosby? He goes, oh, well, I just have, a lot of respect for him. You know why he has a lot of respect for him? Because he wanted to always be on his level. And to be perfectly honest, if you look at their stats, yes, Sidney's always going to have the cups and probably about 15 more points than him a year. But to be perfectly honest, the two of them are pretty comparable. They're pretty good. And to have Staal right now this could be his last year. They could sign him to an extension. Who knows? But I think he's really actually kind of happy because he was Minnesota Wild's number one center the last 3 or 4 years. I think at this point in his career, he was probably looking to not a way out. I think he just wanted somebody to kind of take that number one so he could be number two.
Right.
And just groom guys. He's going to be able to groom a Dylan Cousins. He's going to be able to help Jack with those leadership qualities that Jack has already shown. This is a big, big step for the Sabres. I think Kevin Adams recognized that. He's recognized the deficiencies the Sabres have had. And on top of that, he saved the Sabres $1.25 million on the cap, which, as we've both heard, supposedly there's this $70 million internal cap. We don't know if that's true. I've heard that that's the bottom. And right. that there's a little bit of wiggle room. There might be $3 to $4 million that they might swing around, but a lot of teams are having internal caps per the Elliot Friedmans, per the Darren Dreggers of the world. It's just not the Sabres, and I think that's where me at first, I was just like, what are the Sabres doing? Why are they even saying this? And then I find out, okay, there's going to be about 16 to 17 teams that are going to have the same issues in smaller markets. So the Eric Staal trade, to get back to that, he is going to be such a key to this season. You can't say one player can push you in one direction or another, but Eric Staal really can. Because a lot of the guys I was thinking of were younger, and I'm just like, we just need to put somebody in that second line center position just to not have Dylan Cousins and screw up like a Casey Middlestat like we did before.
Right.
Eric Stahl's not going to do that. He's going to take every opportunity himself to make sure that Dylan Cousins understands, his role on the team. This is what you need to do in order to get to that second line center spot.
Right.
And who knows, Dylan Cousins might even start up on the wing because there's a couple other teams that have done that in the past. If they want to get a guy in and try to get him going, I think Staal is going to have that calming effect on this team. He can still produce. It's not like a Wayne Simmons experiment, and I think Wayne Simmons still could potentially be on the team next year. I have no problem with him. He's not meant to be up in the lineup anymore.
Right.
Staal can be on your second, and God forbid something happens to Jack, Staal can fill in. That you build depth. It's kind of like how we were talking about with the Bills earlier. Now that we have Staal, if something happens to Jack, because you remember last year, as soon as Jack went down when he had the flu or whatever the heck he had,
he was banged up horrible. Too. I mean, yeah, he was banged up.
Was horrible.
Right, he was very banged up, and in terms of the Staal move, I like it from the perspective that they've always tried to replace a hole that was left by a young player with a young player.
Mm-hmm.
And they have enough young players. Like they're one of the youngest teams in the National Hockey League. They've spent meaning used a lot of draft picks on NHL talent, guys that had highly accomplished NCAA careers, or maybe somebody in the foreign land that had a really good league or really good season in Russia or in the Czech Republic or whatever. Now they're bringing in a player that actually has seen every which scenario that you could see in the NHL. He's played at the highest of highs. He won a Stanley Cup in Carolina. He got traded from Carolina, which he even said, in plenty of interviews, he never expected that. He went to Minnesota, was asked to be, a lot more than I think what he was prepared for, and he filled that role very well. Now he's in this later stage of his career, and I actually think that this trade for Eric Staal is amazing for his career because you touched on it could be his last year. I actually think it could extend his career potentially. However long he wants to play, he's playing behind Jack Eichel, reuniting with Jeff Skinner, who he played with in Carolina. The fit made all the sense in the world, and that's what's so fascinating about this trade. I never heard a rumbling of it, didn't hear a whisper about the Buffalo Sabres wanting to trade for Eric Staal. They trade for Eric Staal. My mind just explodes thinking, this actually makes sense. Did a Sabres GM actually do something that actually had a flow to it? And Marcus Johansson, I liked him, but he wasn't a true center. He fit better as a winger, where now they got a guy that is lined up in the faceoff circle for 10, almost 15 years now, somewhere around there, and has seen the ebbs and flows of playing in the National Hockey League. And I think his experience will be massive for guys like Jeff Skinner, who are experienced players, but spreading that out, spreading the experience between Eichel, Skinner, and Staal, and kind of hoping that kind of radiates throughout the team to some of the younger guys that have really only known losing, have only known playing in Buffalo and losing most of the time in pretty embarrassing fashion. I hate to say that, but they're up 2-0, 2-0. And they blow a game, 5-2, 4-3. It's just Rasmus Ristolainen, Zemgus Girgensons, Johan Larsson. Those guys have experienced nothing but just a lot of frustration, a lot of competitive pain. And I think an addition like Eric Staal can really kind of help see the light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. And I'm looking forward to it. I really am. I'm hoping that he can put up some points. He had 19 goals last year. A lot of people are saying he's old, he's washed up, he's done. I don't think so. I think this will actually help extend his career. Him at 35 could arguably be better on the Sabres than him at 35 on any other team. That could be the case, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I wanted to get to some comments from some of the viewers and the listeners. Tim Giles says, good morning on game day, Mr. Buffalo and your guest. Go Bills. Go Bills, Tim. Thanks for tuning in.
Go Bills, Tim.
Yeah, Matt McKee says, I expect more runs from Allen this week, to be completely honest. We touched on that. Joe says, which color jersey today? I like the hat, Joe. Which color jersey today? I'm thinking they're wearing blue, right? Miami usually wears white.
Yeah, the Bills are wearing blue. If he's asking which jersey should he be wearing today, I will be wearing my white Jim Kelly jersey because that's what I wore last week. That's my tailgate jersey, and they won last week, so you keep it rolling. I'm a skeptic. I will admit, I'm a skeptic when it comes to jersey wearing. I'm not really like
superstitious.
Yeah. I'm always the one on the edge of my couch when I'm watching a Bills game. I mean, last week was a little bit different because I have folks around me that are kind of there, like palling around. But like today, like I'll be there just like glued to the TV, paying attention and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm going white Jim Kelly, but I think we've touched on this before. White is always the crisp color. So if you want to stick with your white jerseys today, Bills fans, do it up. But if not, I love our blue jerseys too. Don't get me wrong.
Right. I think that as far as the jersey that I'm going to rock, I think I'm going to go with a Thurman Thomas. Last week I wore a Josh Allen. I'm actually not really superstitious about that stuff. used to be, like back in the high school days where I actually did compete in sports. But now that day is over, that time is over, I'm kind of just like, to hell with that. I'm gonna wear whatever jersey I want. So
Right.
I'm wearing my royal blue NFL vintage Thurman Thomas jersey with like the extremely thick collar. Like the collars on those jerseys back in the
Yep.
day were so thick. I wear like the thinnest white undershirt underneath it because it's like a sweater. It really it's nuts.
Mhm.
But yeah, as far as jerseys that we're wearing, Phil's going with his white Jim Kelly. Can't go wrong with anything related to Jim Kelly and the Buffalo Bills heyday. And I'll be rocking the Thurman Thomas. Obviously, my last name is Thomas, so it kind of, and Thurman's one of my favorite running backs, my favorite team, so it works pretty well. We got a fantasy football question from Bronco Plays, the YouTube channel Bronco Plays on YouTube. I like Josh Allen against Miami over Wilson against the Patriots. Do you agree? I'll let you take the floor with this one. What do you think of that in terms of a fantasy football question?
It's tough because Josh usually balls out against Miami.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is with me, and this is what I always precaution people with, is the narrative. The narrative that he's good against Miami. Generally, that does keep going, but you never know if 1 week, and it could be this week, because guess what? This is technically, if you want to talk about, this is technically preseason game 2 or 3.
Right.
Everybody's still not ready. Yes, they got game film on everybody last week. They were full go. Josh might be as good as he was last week or better, or Josh could fall back to the Josh Allen that we know. I would go experience over what Josh has. Not because I don't believe in Josh, but if you're talking about fantasy, if I had to choose between Wilson and Allen, I would pick Wilson because I know Wilson, A, isn't going to turn over the ball, and B, he's smart with his throws. So I would go Wilson against the Patriots. The Patriots, they have Stephon Gilmore, but that's pretty much it. That defense is pretty backed up, and they were playing the Dolphins last week. So don't take what the Patriots did against the Dolphins. Don't take that with a grain of salt with their defense. I think Seattle has a much more in-tune offense, and they have a lot of receivers. Like, Metcalf, he can get open.
Metcalf is fantastic. The fact that he fell is disgusting. Like, it's just, I've been saying that. I remember saying that literally on this show. DK Metcalf, people are talking about how he can only run one route. Like, what are you talking about? This guy is a physical, just
he's a
behemoth as a wide receiver, and he's fast. He can run. He's elusive. The guy is just a complete anomaly at the wide receiver position, and he's only going to get better. So I agree with you in terms of Allen and Wilson. I would start Allen only for the fact that I think this matchup is much better for Allen against Miami, not because of the previous success, but I think that Allen coming off of that 300-yard passing day, the one thing I loved about Allen in that game was he spread the football around. And he was able to have 4 or 5, maybe 6 Bills receivers had 4 or more catches last week, which I really liked that. And I try to avoid the genius of Bill Belichick as much as possible. So I'll go with Allen just to play devil's advocate. Brian Auman said, for the first time for a long time, the offense will be called upon to win this game. And I completely agree, Brian. The defense is banged up, so we know that going in. And we also know that the Bills' offense is on paper much better than what it's been the last couple of seasons. So they should be able to go, drive for drive, putting points on the board, whether they're field goals, whether they're touchdowns. What do you think of that, Phil?
Yes, we just need to see a better week coming from Tyler Bass because I think there are going to be more field goal opportunities this game. And then obviously Josh Allen needs to keep, if he is going to run on those RPOs or just have, designed runs like a lot of people are expecting us to do today, we need to keep the turnovers down and just get into that range. Short passes, it's the same thing like we did last week. Dial up those short passes, RPOs, play action. Josh Allen was 70% or higher from play action, which includes RPO. So hit that, get that down the field. If you can get into field goal range, do that. Because if you got to force Ryan Fitzpatrick to play from behind, do that. We're in
Mhm.
stage 2 of Ryan Fitzpatrick's cycle. Remember, always year 1, Ryan Fitzpatrick is amazing. Year 2, just how we saw last week, 3 interceptions. We both love Ryan Fitzpatrick. Who doesn't love Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Right.
He's in year 2 of a cycle. I don't want to see Tua in this game, but we might see Tua in this game if things get out of hand.
Right. I agree with you. And taking this banner off here. So, yeah, as far as another comment, Ryan Fitzpatrick, throwing that comment out there, I think at some point, I don't know when, but if I can somehow make this a reality, I want to try. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick should have his own ESPN 30 for 30. I really do. Like, think of the journey of his career, playing at Harvard, the Ivy League quarterback, somebody that has bounced around and has always found a way to start, whether he earned it or not. I find his whole career, it is like, it's fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. He's like the true NFL journeyman quarterback, and he's 47 yards away from passing Steve Young, who's in the Hall of Fame.
He's gonna get today, and it's not that
gonna get that. Yeah, I mean, unless he gets hurt, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It would be great that he gets it done against the Bills, not because I want him to, but it's just like it all comes full circle. Mm-hmm. I feel like he deserves a lot of credit. And what's funny is he's going to pass a lot of Hall of Famers, and he probably will not be in the Hall of Fame, but he should be in some sort of the Thomas Takes Hall of Fame, the Phil Munson Hall of Fame, because that guy is so awesome and so amazing, and he just keeps ticking. And some things have happened to him this year. Sad things with his mom passing away and stuff like that. Right. But he just keeps going, and he's playing off as me and you can relate. He plays off of like pure emotion, pure like adrenaline. Sometimes he is
pure
fantastic.
Passion.
Yep, and that's all you need. And I think that's what Tua needs. I mean, to me, like this division in a few years, it's going to be Miami and the Bills again.
I agree.
Kind of like Miami. So.
Things will come full circle finally.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Kind of like how it was in the 90s. That's what I was getting at. But I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick is in. I agree with you with 30 for 30. Ryan Fitzpatrick would be amazing. And you know who should narrate that? Terrell Owens.
Oh my God, that'd be great.
Owens loves Ryan Fitzpatrick.
He does.
He loves him. So I think if he, I mean, not for the whole thing, but if he did the intro,
Stevie Johnson should have a major part in that too. And I remember I actually met Stevie Johnson a couple years ago, and I'm like, how did it fit? Like, what was it that made you guys work together so well? And he just simply said, we worked on it in practice when no one wanted to even work with us. It was like they were the low guys on the team.
Yep.
So they, at the time, Stevie was buried in the depth chart. Fitz was looked at as a
7th round draft pick.
7th round draft choice. Yeah. And he literally said Ryan Fitzpatrick was the only guy that would stay after practice and throw the ball to him. Like everybody else was just ready to go home. And that's why Fitz became who he became. I mean, that and Stevie Johnson, those guys are willing to put the work in that, maybe nobody else was willing to put in, or maybe everybody just had, we're going to punch in at this time, we're going to clock out at that time, where those guys were like, no, we're going to make our way in this league. But yeah, to wrap up the show, I wanted a score prediction from you as far as what do you think the final score will be in this game?
It's going to be I feel like it's going to be very similar to last week. I think it's going to be probably Bills, we'll say, because there's going to be a couple field goals in there. It's going to be another 27. I'm going to say 27-20 game. Covers the spread because it's a 5.5 spread right now. But it's gonna be close. A couple people were saying like a Josh Allen fourth quarter like comeback. I really don't want that. I just want us to be ahead the whole game and have our defense be able to hold off Ryan Fitzpatrick, which they should be able to do. But I think the Bills cover the spread today, 27-20. It's going to be a little bit tighter than the Jets game, though. That's for sure.
I think it kind of flows with what I think, but it kind of doesn't, because I think the game will be close for a time, but then I think Buffalo is going to just blow the roof off of it. Not that there's a roof in Miami, but
there's
it's
kind of a
invisible.
roof in Miami. That
There's
weird Hard Rock thing.
Yeah, there is actually. There is a roof. What am I talking about? There's like
It'll
a little
blow
square.
the
Yeah.
flaps. Yeah,
What am I talking
flaps.
about? Yeah, and there are tarps even pre-COVID on their fan sections where the fans are supposed to be sitting to support
The
their
people
South
that they're
Beach
having
football
there.
franchise. They're not there for their franchise. I always throw that in there because Miami fans, man, what are they waiting for? I mean, they should be there rooting on their Dolphins. That's not right. So my score prediction is 31-17. I think this game,
difference.
yeah, it's a little bit of a difference. Yeah, as in terms of this game, I think it will be 20-14 for a little while, and then I think Fitz is really going to try to make a little bit too much happen, and that's where the turnovers will happen. And finally, I think Buffalo will be able to take advantage and put those turnovers in for 6. And I think Josh Allen is going to have another great day today. I don't know if he's going to have the 300 yards that all the Twitter sphere wants him to have every single week, which is another topic for another day. As long as the Bills win, that's all that matters. So, Phil, thanks for joining me, man, and good luck to you this week. You're playing my dad, actually, in the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Fantasy League, and I wanted to talk to you about some of the guys that I like on your team: Tyreek Hill, Derrick Henry, DJ Moore, 3 studs. I think could potentially lead you to victory this week with some decent matchups.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm hoping this week will be better than last week. Last week, my team just they started off real hot. I noticed, and then just both of my teams did. So I have, like I was telling you before, I have the 2 IRKO teams in 2 different leagues. My teams are pretty much the same. Our league is a little bit differently set up with 2 quarterbacks. I just hope that Wentz doesn't do certain Wentz things. I'm not
Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Dak. Dak's going to get his points. I mean, I'm not the big believer in Dak, but he gets fantasy points. So Carson can get you a lot of fantasy points, and then sometimes he can just completely. But Tyreek Hill, if he can just, because last week I was screaming at my TV because in the first half, if you remember, he did nothing. He got 2 passes, and I'm just like, and it was all to Sammy Watkins, and Sammy Watkins was sitting on my bench in one league, and he got 25 points, and I was not a happy camper. Like, stop throwing to Sammy, throw to Tyreek. And they finally threw to Tyreek in the second half, and he got me a touchdown, but it was too little too late. But hopefully he can carry me this week. It already looks like I should be doing better in both my leagues just by projections this week. My ESPN league is looking a little but whatever.
I'm praying for victories in all my leagues this week. I really need to either go 2-0 or 1-1. Going 0-2 in a fantasy league is not good for fantasy football.
I went 0 for 3 last week. Sorry, in the 0 for 3. It was not good. It was not good. I had 1 close game. The other 2 got like I said, I started strong. And guys just kind of like fell off the face of the earth. And I mean, Tyreek Hill didn't help me. If Tyreek Hill can just match what he did in the second half and the first half and combine it,
you'll be good.
I'd be winning every week.
I think he's gonna have a bounce back week. The Chargers are kind of they're here, they're there, they're everywhere. Like they're just kind of you don't know what you're gonna get.
It's Tyrod Taylor.
You said it, not me. What made me pretty notorious in the Buffalo Bills circles was my harsh criticism at times of Tyrod Taylor. And, hey, I wish the guy the best. I don't dislike him as a person. Great guy. I wish him the best. It's just he was a stopgap guy for a couple of years, and that's what he is.
Throw a decent deep ball to Charles Clay once in a while, and
he
never could have, like, him and Sammy never on the same page. Not to get off on that kind of tirade, but yeah, he's. I think Anthony Lynn I think he has a good connection with him, so he knows what kind of. Sure. I mean, look at it last week. It was a 16-13 game. Like,
yeah, it was pretty ugly. Pretty ugly stat sheet too, like 208 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. It was just a Tyrod Taylor day. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he does throughout the rest of the season because I really like Justin Herbert. But yeah, man, thanks for coming on. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. You always got a spot on this show, and take care, man. Enjoy the game today. Stay safe. Wash those hands. Sanitize. What a weird world we're living in, man. I
Yep.
can't wait till this stuff is over.
Right. Yeah, and at least have some Bills fans in the stands and not pumped in noise. I mean,
Right.
ugh,
We don't
ugh.
need that artificial crowd noise like the Colts did back when they were playing the Patriots.
Right,
So,
right. Like how Tom would say, "Oh boy, oh boy."
right.
Poor Peyton. I still like Peyton though. He's good
Oh,
in my book.
God bless him. He's one of my favorite ever. So, yeah, Phil, thanks for joining me.
Don't have him in Buffalo for too long. He might fall down the stairs of a certain bar and twist his ankle in preseason. I didn't tell you that.
I heard that story. That's a notorious one, too. That's pretty nuts.
Yep.
But, yeah, thank you for hopping on, Phil, and take care. Good luck in your fantasy matchup this week, and we'll talk soon.
We'll talk soon. Thanks, Ryan, for having me. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Take care, buddy.
Take care.
Folks, that was Phil Munson, Sabres blogger, one of my great buddies that I met along the way within the podcasting world, hopping on here to dive into the Buffalo Bills Week 2 matchup with the Miami Dolphins. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. For more, you can find the show right here on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Facebook page. You'll find it on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast YouTube channel. Check it out. Plenty more to come. Plenty of guests. Stay tuned. Take care and go Bills.